It's not TV, it's HPO.
It's not TV, it's HPO.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Hope, positivity, and optimism.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. No.
Hello, how y'all doing? Hi, Joseph. I hear that you have a show, not famous, and wish you good luck with your show, and I thank you what you're doing for your audience and your people that you're trying to make impression on their life. So good luck with your show, and thank you for all you do. Bye, Joseph.
We are human, we are animals, we crave the ability to be we. I know it's called me undies. We undies might have sounded differently, right?
Is it a disco now?
Yeah, it's an after party, so it's now we go with the flash.
My goal in life is to be a laptop sticker.
Me too.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
It's a great honor, Mr. Jaffe. It's always nice to be with you.
I'm so happy to be with you. I'm honored.
Thanks for doing this, too. It's a real service to the community.
What a great organization and a show that offers hope, optimism, creative solutions, entertainment.
Thank you for doing this, Joseph. It's your gift to the universe, and it's appreciated.
Very human, and I like that.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, welcome back to another episode of Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous. And I think today's episode is the epitome of, and the reason why I even started or continued this, because I have real famous people on the show, like Dr. Mario Martinez. And I saw him in the green room in the background, smiling at the initial. I had to, they say that you can take the man out of Africa, but you can't take Africa out the man. Of course, this is not a Staten Island accent, but a South African accent. And today we're going to talk about longevity, and we're going to talk about the centenarian paradox. We're going to be educated. We're going to go to school, and this is one school that you're going to want to spend as much time in session as possible. I was thinking of the Tara Umara tribe from the book Born to Run. What can we learn from other people? I mean, that is the question of questions, right? At the end of the day, what can we learn from others? The more we can learn from others, the more we can have not just a quality, but a quantity life as well. So Dr. Mario Martinez coming on the show in a moment. But first, as I've been doing every single episode in 2024, is giving you my why statement, which is this idea of helping people get unstuck, return to growth, and become forever change. What do I mean by that? Well, I started this talk show in March of 2020 when COVID hit, and the goal was to help people that were stuck at home or stuck in general. Well, if you're stuck, the best thing to do is to get unstuck, and hopefully I'm able to do that in the smallest, even most insignificant way. If you like the show, please subscribe. bit.ly/subscribe to the show and tell others about it. I'm also a business and leadership coach, something I started in 2023, helping businesses and leadership teams and entrepreneurs get unstuck and return to growth. And finally, very close to my heart is my new book, Forever Changed: How a Global Pandemic Changed My Direction, My Purpose, and My Life. The central premise behind the book is if you did not change during this awful, disgusting, terrible thing, but also magnificent and beautiful thing, quantum superposition, if you will, then you wasted an opportunity. But don't worry, there's still time. And just a little bit of fun facts about the book. The book cover that you see in front of you is actually not a static image. It is not a GIF either. It is actually a video. It was designed by Iranian-born NFT designer Ali Sabet. And this is the video How many books have you ever encountered where the cover is actually a video? And if you wanted any message there, the message is that I am a imperfect work in progress, learning, growing, changing, evolving all the time. And so are you. But now it's time for our seated soliloquy because, of course, I'm seated and it's a monologue. We're very literal here in not famous land. And today is something, of course, inspired by my guest. It's called 80 is the New 50. Now, I've got to tell you something. I've been thinking about, that statement, and people say 50 is the new 40, and 60 is the new 50, and 70 is the new 60. And then I thought, well, wait a second. Things are changing rather rapidly and maybe even exponentially. Is it possible that there are some quantum leaps happening where, in fact, 80 is the new 50, or maybe 100 or 110 is the new 50 or the new 60? Ultimately, where is age? Is age there? Is age in the bones? Is age absolutely something physical, physiological? Is it emotional? Is it spiritual? Is it a little bit of everything? I don't know. I'm not the expert. I know who the expert is, and you'll hear from him shortly in terms of some of the work he's working on. But I do think that there is mindset involved. I do think there is logic and emotion. I think that there is heart and there is head. Recently, Karen Eber on my show, we spoke about this idea of thinking with your heart and feeling with your brain, being able to think about these crossover states that might sound a little bit woo-woo, but really are they woo-woo at all? People thinking about concepts like midlife crisis. What is a midlife crisis? Maybe it's nothing more than a midlife awakening. But what is midlife anyway? And when is the middle of your life? In many respects, when you stop growing, when you stop evolving, when you stop changing, you start dying. When you stand still, you are dying. And in many respects, the day we're born, we're dying, aren't we? We're one day closer to that eventual demise. So how do we seize life? How do we maximize our time on this beautiful planet? These are some of the thoughts that I put into my book, this idea of if today was the last day of your life, would it have been worthwhile? These are things to think about, and it helps to also have a little bit of science and a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of neuroscience maybe in play to help us understand the world and how it's changing and how we can be willing participants and active participants as opposed to bystanders or spectators or even collateral damage. Those are some of my initial thoughts. Now it's time to bring on the expert, Dr. Mario Martinez. Dr. Mario Martinez is a clinical neuropsychologist who specializes in how cultural beliefs affect health and longevity. He proposes, based on credible research evidence, that longevity is learned and the causes of health are inherited. For the past 25 years, he has studied healthy centenarians, which is 100 years or older worldwide, and found that only 20 to 25% can be attributed to genetics. The rest is related to how they live and the cultural beliefs they share. Dr. Martinez does interviews on Zoom or live, and today he is, I hope, live and not a hallucination or some embodiment through Apple's Vision Pro goggles. He's the author of the best-selling book, The MindBody Code, that teaches his theory and practice of biocognitive science for the general public as well as professionals in the life sciences. In addition to longevity, he also lectures on why our immune system is not just a protector. Instead, it responds to the cultural premises we learn to perceive the world. It is not hard to realize how out of my league and out of depth I am, and I don't care. I'm just super excited. Mario, welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I said earlier, I don't know if I said this to you in the green room, but I almost felt like Augustus Gloop in the chocolate factory, because I'm a kid in a candy store. I just see so much, and I just want to touch everything and eat everything, and ultimately fall into the river of chocolate. In terms of talking about these central premises, I don't even know where to start. So I'm going to ask you, where would you like to start today? Because I got lots of prompts everywhere. I've got your books teed up, and I've got just questions after questions. But why don't you start? Where do you want to start today?
First, starting with how I came about to study centenarians. I wanted to find out, in good science, you want to find out what works. You don't go to what doesn't work. In gerontology, unfortunately, they're studying the illnesses of aging, the diseases of aging. They don't see a lot of healthy people, and they hardly see any centenarians who are healthy. So I thought I should find out how centenarians live. How do they perceive the world? And at first, as a neuropsychologist, I thought, well, it's got to be genetics. If they have genetics, and after close to 25 years, I found, and others have found, that it's only, as you said, 20 to 25%. So what is it about them? And what I did first was to look at where they are in different parts of the world, in the so-called blue zones in some areas of the world, like in Okinawa and Sardinia and other places, but also outside of the blue zones. And I went in as an anthropologist first. No testing, no premises, just to find out how they live, how they act. And I thought that when I asked them questions, for example, I asked one centenarian, a woman centenarian, who, what was her, I didn't say what's your ritual. I used anthropologically, what are the things that you do on a regular basis that bring you meaning, you look forward to it? And she said, oh, before I go to sleep, I have a shot of rum. And this is in Cuba. And I thought, okay, well, it's got to be the Cuban rum. Then the next day I asked another one, and he said, the first thing I do in the morning is I have a cigar. So I thought, Cuban cigars and Cuban rum, that's it. Till finally I went on and on and on and found that the ritual is what has the immunological value, the immunological function. If you don't have rituals in your life, it's a very fragile way of leading the world, because the rituals are more terrains that keep you, especially under adversity. So after so many years, I was able to identify factors that come out, because I'll tell you now, you were asking the question, but let me jump in for a second. What I call the usual suspects of wellness are not really sufficient. For example, the diets and exercise and meditation and all these other things, they're necessary but not sufficient. And what the research is finding in the latest research, what looks at biological age, is that exercise works for some people, it doesn't work for others. Vegetarians work for some, meat eating works for others. So it's a very individualist, what we call in science idiographic, which is the individual is the universe. So then I wanted to see, what is it about them that goes beyond the culture? What is unique about them, independent of their cultures? And then I found 4 factors of how they perceive the world, and 4 factors of how they emote or how they feel the world. And to my surprise and my satisfaction, each of those factors is anti-inflammatory or anti-stress, which are the things that make you age. You don't age with stress, you age with inflammation. So this was a wonderful results that I got that turns the whole process upside down of longevity. So that's kind of the short answer.
So you spoke about 4 factors. Can you tell us what the 4 factors are?
Yes. On the perception, how they perceive the world, they're what I call their consciousness of the world. One is time, how they perceive time. The other one is aging, how they perceive the aging process. Health, how they perceive their health and the health process. And the most important, self-valuation, how much they value themselves in order to feel the good things that life has to offer. And in the emotions, they have salient emotions that come out. You see them in every culture you go with them. Gratitude, they have the capacity for gratitude, generosity, admiration, and curiosity. And all of those 8 are either anti-inflammatory, anti-stress, or both. And that, I believe, is what allows them to live a long life, those 8 factors.
It's amazing. I mean, I gratitude, admiration, curiosity, and what was the other one?
And generosity.
Generosity. Wow. I mean, you would never take those four items or those 4 elements and think about them as anti-inflammatory and actually enhancing longevity and, I suppose, quality of life as well. And what's so strong about this is these are morals, these are core values, these are the kinds of values that we hope are instilled in us from our parents and grandparents, and we hope that we can instill these into our children. And there are also values that can be adopted by companies, by entrepreneurial companies. So there's a second question in there, but first I'd love you to react to that comment, which is this idea of this is almost a moral imperative, is it not?
Yes, and and by that Aristotle was right, and I'll talk about Aristotle in a little while. That Aristotle is actually getting a lot of his theories confirmed in what's called psychoneuroimmunology, and this is what I've done. My area of psychoneuroimmunology, which is how thoughts and emotions affect the nervous, immune, and endocrine system. So, for example, let's take gratitude. Gratitude is an emotion that when you express it without quid pro quo, without saying, I'll give you this and you give me that, you begin to secrete oxytocin, endorphins, serotonin, GABA, all of the ingredients that are good for anti-inflammation and anti-stress. But our cultures teach us to not respond that way. If I say to you, I like your hair, oh, you haven't seen it in the morning. Or I like your shirt. It's an old shirt that was given to me. It's a minimizing, and it's a way of refusing the gift. So if I say, I love your hair, thank you very much, oxytocin. Oh, it's just this and that, you excuse it. No oxytocin. In fact, you get a little bit of stress because you're excusing yourself and finding something negative about yourself.
Refusing the gift or excusing the gift. It shows that, I mean, we just say it differently in this world, in the normal world, because you are not of this normal world, Mario. We just say, hey, take a compliment. But you really need to take the compliment. Your life could depend on it.
Exactly. Another one, let's jump to the admiration. Again, all cultures are collectivists. They want you to work for the collectivism. When you try to individuate, you get punished. So admiration is a very important process that we have to go through. It's been from the beginning of Homo sapiens. Why? Because admiration is a behavior out there that's worthy of being imitated. It's laudable. And we're set up in a way so that we can learn from others, that we begin to secrete dopamine when there's admiration. Because dopamine is a feel-good neuropeptide. And so, but if you have admiration with envy, no dopamine and none of the rest. So if you say, oh yeah, he's really good, but he got all the money in the world and he got everything handed to him, that's envy. And envy is inflammatory. Admiration without envy is anti-inflammatory.
I actually saw a comment. I was looking on Instagram right now, and the question, the statement was, "We age with information?" ?
Yes, because what happens is that, and I'll get to the specifics of the cells will grow old and they reproduce themselves and everything. But there's some tests that we're using now from one of the top labs in the world that actually looks at the inflammation of the IgG, which is one of the antibodies, one of the antibodies that of the 5 antibodies, IgG. And the IgG, all cells have something that's called glycan. It's a carbohydrate that is around the cells, and it covers the cells. And that carbohydrate has to do with the functioning of the proteins, but also the level of inflammation, anti-inflammation in the body. So what these people found is that when they look at the IgG, that antibody, and they look at what's going on with the glycan in that IgG, they can generalize to 90-some% of the cells. So whatever's going on with your IgG, you can generalize and you can say, this is how your cells are aging. So how do we know? Because when you look at someone with glycan 30, 60, the inflammation, what they call the inflammaging, is higher. So you have an inflammaging, which is a natural inflammaging process. But centenarians have something that I call a compensatory complexity. They have the inflammation, but they have compensatory anti-inflammation that doesn't allow them to get sick like usually people do. So we age with inflammation. Inflammation is what ages the cells, and eventually they die.
So I asked this question earlier, and I wanted to go back to it, which is, this may be a little lateral, but is it possible to use the concept of core values and aging and longevity, even when we think about a company, that a company that has core values like admiration, like generosity, like curiosity, these non-inflammatory values, is it possible to even say that culturally a company can become can enhance their health, wellness, and longevity?
Well, you're way ahead of the curve, because we're actually doing that with companies. We will give them that CCI, that questionnaire, to, let's say, executives, to the managers, and to the employees. And then we have them take the glycan age test, which will give you your biological age. And then we will say management has an average biological age of 40, but the employees have a biological age of 60. So something's going on here. Something's going on with this company. Some people are anti-aging and some people are pro-aging. And the good news is that we can change that by changing the core values, by changing not the mission statement and the vision statement, but the culture that they speak and the culture that they deal with. One of the things that makes people sick in organizations, two things. One is to give them a job without meaning. Two, to give them responsibility without authority. Both of those conditions will cause a helplessness that goes into the immune helplessness. When you're giving someone a job and you don't give them the resources to overcome the challenge, they go into a physiological helplessness. Their natural killer cells begin to drop, which fight cancer and other kinds of things. So it's a psychoneurological process that's going on here. So I'm doing that with companies already. So it's very interesting that you said that.
It's amazing, and you know, it seems fairly obvious and logical that there are healthcare costs and savings associated with this as well. When people are showing up to work, showing up with their full self, and conversely, not staying at home and getting sick all the time and making other people sick, because it is truly, you know, that state of mind is, and that depressive state of mind can be infectious too. It just stands to reason. And the fact that you're now finding science and research to support it, it's truly breakthrough.
It is, and we're very excited about it. And getting back to Aristotle, because you talked about morals, and Aristotle's my favorite philosopher. 2,300 years ago, Aristotle said, the life of pleasure is not enough. The hedonic life is not enough. You have to have what he called eudaimonia, which is in Greek is good, daimon is spirit, so the good spirit. And what he said, that eudaimonia was pleasure in meaning, pleasure in purpose, and pleasure in service. So, okay, so that's fine. Aristotle was teaching this. Now, there's some recent research in psychoneurology that wanted to test that. And what they did is they had divided people into two groups, the people that were hedonic in one group, the people who were more eudaimonic in another group. And they tested something in the immune cells that's extremely specific, CTRA, conserve transcriptional response to adversity. These are genes in the immune cells that fight viruses. They fight these kind of antigens. They identify the antigens and anti-inflammatory. What they found was that the people that were more Aristotelian, the eudaimonia, have better CTRA than people who are hedonic. So the people that have the eudaimonia type of life can deal with adversity better than the others. And the interesting thing is that both, when they tested their level of pleasure, both had the same level of pleasure, but the immune system could tell the difference.
So I'm going to go to another philosopher. This is the quote that I found for you today. The quality, not the longevity of one's life, is what is important. And I say philosopher, but this actually, it's true philosopher and many other things. This is Martin Luther King Jr. And he says, the quality, not the longevity of one's life is what is important. I'd love you to react to that. And then also there's an additional part, right, which is, can both actually, you know, are they mutually exclusive? Can you actually have longevity and quality? Do you not have to choose one or the other? What do they say? You know, do you want it better, cheaper, or faster? Pick two. In this case, can you in fact pick both?
I think Martin Luther King was right, because what I studied is not only longevity, but healthy longevity. I don't study centenarians that are sick in nursing homes. I study the centenarians that have meaning in their lives, that are healthy, that are productive, that do the things that Aristotle talked about with the meaning of life and the purpose of life. And yes, you can have both. You can have good health and you can have longevity, but they have to come together. It's not, you don't want to be around just to be a vegetable. That's not a quality of life. But you can have both, and that's what I'm working on. That what I've learned from centenarians, I'm turning it into something that's applicable. And what I'm saying is that the causes of health are inherited and longevity is culturally learned. That throws the whole system upside down, but with good science to back it up.
Look, I'm excited because starting tomorrow, I'm going to have a cigar in the morning and rum before I go to bed at night. I love the concept of rituals, routines, you know, being able to look forward to something. We're operating in a very interesting time right now where mental health, we're in a mental health crisis. The other day, I even said we're in a social crisis, let alone mental health. We feel more disconnected, more alone, more isolated than ever before, even though there is all this technology that supposedly connects us and allows us to connect with others. What are your thoughts on technology, on social media, on all of these so-called connective devices? Are they in fact inflammatory or anti-inflammatory?
They're not connecting. They're disconnecting us from self. They're connecting us with that, what I call the I self. Yeah, you're connected with the I self, but you're not connected with people. So, for example, if you look at someone in vivo and live, and you smile at that person, you can get oxytocin. But if you do it on here, YouTube, it takes longer for the system to pick up on that. So we're not made for that. I think the technology should work for us. We don't want to become slaves of technology. So you ask people now how they feel, and they tell you how they think. You say, how do you feel? Well, I feel that I should. That's a thought. How do you feel? Well, I feel that that's a thought, because they're disconnecting from the emotions. And if you ask, especially some of the teenagers, so how do you feel right now? Well, I feel like I want to go and download. That's a thought. And now they ghost you. They don't want to talk to you anymore. They ghost you, and you don't hear from them again. So all of that we learned that was good is not transferring really well to technology. So we have to take technology back and let it work for us rather than the other way around.
So when someone says, how do you feel right now? The answer isn't, I feel like rum or a cigar. It should just be happy, grateful, present,
sad,
alive.
Whatever. Yes, that's right. And one thing that rituals do, rituals by definition, good rituals, you never abuse anything, because I tested these people. I asked them, okay, so you have rum. How many do you have? Oh, just one. They never abuse things. They don't abuse you don't abuse what you love. You abuse what you need. With a cigar, the same thing. I'm not suggesting you smoke. I've never smoked. And if you like rum, fine. But what I'm saying is that there are many good rituals: going for a walk, meditating, having one of the causes of health, by the way, is breaking bread with family, with candles, because candles have an epigenetic component that for hundreds of thousands of years, fire has a sense of safety and a sense of comfort and communication. That's what I did. You were talking about COVID. When COVID, I had no problems with COVID. I went into the cave. I had dinners with candles every day, and I did all the things that you do in a cave, and I was fine.
You know, it makes me think about all these stories when we would hear from these, centenarians. Is that the right word?
Centenarians.
Centenarians. And they would say, well, every single night I had a whiskey or a scotch, or, I think of like George Burns. I don't know if he lived to 100, but I also think the idea of having a glass of wine. He did?
Yes. And exactly. I have a friend, because I have a lot of centenarian friends. I'm very close centenarian. He's 94. And I asked him, and this will give you an idea of how they think. I said, what kind of medications are you on? He said, okay, I'm taking one medication. I have bourbon on the rocks after dinner every night. And then I asked him, look at the time factor. I said, look, we should go to Spain. I want to take you there so I can show you where my dad is from and all that. No. I thought he was going to say, no, I'm too old. I said, no, it's going to have to be either next year or the following. I'm too busy right now. They project time out, and the biology to a certain degree follows you. I asked a centenarian who was 103 about his vegetable garden. What do you think? What do you think of the garden? He said, oh, it looks great, but what do you see it in 2 years? That's how they think, and they don't have the fear of death, and they don't live in the urgent present, which is very stress producing. No time.
So we're also living in a time, speaking of time, a time of, of pharmaceutical innovation, if you will. And all this talk about living to 100 and 110, 120. And some people are, I think, emboldened and motivated by the ability to extend one's life, to potentially heat time, to be able to get more years on this planet. And others are afraid because of health, because of almost like a curse.
Yes.
What is that? Be careful what you wish for. What are your thoughts about the role that medicine plays, that pharma plays, that big pharma plays, just in terms of the drug component, as opposed to what you are talking about, which is a very, very different, much more natural approach?
Well, there's no question that medicine and pharmaceuticals are wonderful in prolonging life, especially with infections and problems that are more acute. One of the problems is that there's no magic pill. There's no gene that's going to work like this. And there are a lot of researchers that are working with prolonging the lives of worms and rats. That's zoology. Unless you take it to the human being and then you bring in what I call the meaning maker, which is the default mode of the brain, it's not going to work, because you can do stem cells and you can do all kinds of things with DNA. And the meaning maker is the one that's going to be processing that information. And the meaning maker has biology. You attribute things, and the meaning maker is what's called the default mode. This is why some people can meditate and eat yogurt and do all these kinds of things, and they're stressed out and they have hypertension, because the meaning maker is the one that needs to be worked on. And that's what we work on. We work on changing the meaning maker so that then whatever you take will have an effect. The other thing too is that animals don't have an awareness of their awareness. Animals don't have their sense of mortality. So whatever research you do with them, it's zoological research. It's not human. And you have to take it to the human and then bring the component of the meaning maker. And they don't do that. They come up with a stem cell. They come up with a DNA methylation or whatever. And okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to come up with a supplement. We're going to do this drug. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all.
You said animals don't have a sense of sense, or an awareness of awareness, I should say, and a sense of mortality. And you also spoke about this amazing concept. By the way, you are this supreme when it comes to these magnificent words and phrases. You are a poet. Forget about a philosopher, Mario.
Thank you.
Spoke about the urgent present. Now that resonates with me as well, this concept of it's not the present, but the urgent present. Talk a little bit more about what that means. I already have ideas with what that means, but how do you define the urgent present?
You don't want to go to the behavior that says, okay, I'm going fast here. You don't want to, you want to go to the default mode, the meaning maker, which says, I don't have enough time. That's my premise. Time is going fast and I don't have enough time. So what you do is you cram too much into small space. No matter what, you create that mindset that I don't have enough time. So living in the urgent present doesn't, what the Buddhists call the suffering of change. You're in the urgent present and you're already suffering because you're thinking about what you're going to be doing next. You're not into the moment. Centenarians have all the time in the world. And when you're in the urgent present, you're teaching your body hypertension, gastrointestinal problems. 75% of the executives that I work with have gastrointestinal problems. So it's not the time, it's what you do with time. If you're, and another thing is that the mantra that's supported in many businesses, I'm busy, I'm busy. I can't talk to you, I'm busy. And that's good. It's not good at all. When you're busy, you're mismanaging your time, or you're in the urgent present from your way of perceiving the world.
So instead of I'm busy, I don't have the time, really what it has to come down to is this idea of, but I can make time. We can always make time, because unless it's really life and death, it's not life and death.
No, of course. And you notice that all these busy people, when they like someone or they want something they like, somehow they make time.
Yeah,
because it's a priority issue. It's a priority. And one of the things that I do with each of these factors is I give a little mantra. For time, I go to Cervantes with Don Quixote. It was attributed to Napoleon, but it wasn't. It was Cervantes in Don Quixote. Sancho Panza, his helper, would help him put on his armor so he could go fight the windmills. And Don Quixote would say, Sancho, dress me slowly. I'm in a hurry. So that's the mantra. And how do you do that? Well, let's say you're going to work and you're already feeling like you're rushing. You stop, dress me slowly, I'm in a hurry, and you start slowing down. But then to slow down the nervous system, you can do a very simple thing. It's called the Zen walk. You walk around the living room very slowly. You're going to feel a little anxious because you're rushing, but very slowly till you get your nervous system go down to the dress me slowly, I'm in a hurry. It could take 5 minutes around you walk as slowly as you can to feel a little bit out of balance. It's so slow. That resets the nervous system and it'll get you into then slowing down and doing things. And you'll find that as you do that, you're going to be more productive in the long run. You're going to be more productive. And the other thing too is that you have to estimate time. You do an estimate and you say, okay, I think this is going to take me an hour. Okay, empirically, it's going to take me an hour and a half. You start compressing. And one of the things that compresses time is that sense of I don't have time to do anything but what they call the first 30. This is why gerontologists will say, well, when you grow older, you're gonna feel like time is passing very fast. That's how the brain chemistry works, and you don't have enough time because you don't have enough time to live. None of that is true. Curiosity is what elongates time. And the neuropsychology of that is that when you are, the first 30 means that your first marriage, your first sex, your first heartbreak, your first this, your first that. And after 30, well, you've already been married, you've already done this, you're already done that. And the brain pays attention to novelty, to curiosity. And when it pays attention to novelty, it elongates the perception of time. So when you ask a centenarian, do you feel like your time is passing faster than it did? No, it's passing the same time because they're curious. And when you're in the urgent present, you're not curious. You're stressed and apprehensive.
I almost feel, just this morning or yesterday, I was overcome with fear. I was overcome with fear of dying. It happens to me a lot when I just think of what happens in this world and to me when I die. And it's not so much I need reassurance of reincarnation or life after death. I just suddenly was almost debilitated by this absolute binary off switch and dying. And I guess there are two parts to why I'm mentioning this. One is your thoughts as to, because this is not so much the urgent present, it's the urgent future that I fear. But then I think back to, clearly what's happening with your studies from these centenarians. Are they at a point where they're not worried anymore about dying? They're just focused on living and having one more day and enjoying every day as if it was their only day. So I don't know if you can remember the two parts to that, because it was a bit of a.
Important. Let me go from the last from the most recent to the to the first. I tested them. I pushed their limits, and one of them, when I said, "Well, how do you feel about time?" I have all the time in the world. So I said, "What if you die tomorrow?" I said, "That's all the time in the world." So that's how they view it. But I'll give you something for what you're experiencing is what's called existential despair, existential angst, that we're the only animal aware that we're mortal. So this is why my book, I call it the MindBody Code, because we have to change things in codes. You don't say, "I want to relax." The code for relaxing is dropping your shoulders, unclenching your teeth, and dropping your eyelids. That's the code for the brain. So the code for the fear of death is that you're not so much fearing death, but there's a subconscious process going on there that's saying, "I'm lamenting what I haven't done in my life." And as I get closer and closer, I'm lamenting more. So then it turns into the fear of death. How to deal with the fear of death? You stop. I'm afraid I'm going to die. You stop and say, "Okay, now what am I lamenting in my life? I'm lamenting that I didn't do this and this and that. What can I do now about that, or something related to that?" The fear of death disappears, because the fear of death is basically a lamenting coming out as a mask.
Well, I mean, I'm not lamenting a damn thing right now. I'm so happy in the present and so satisfied and grateful for this opportunity to learn so much. It's beautiful because, Mario, so many things that I think we suspected as humans are now being proven. Even, I'll tell you immediately, I was thinking of an athlete, whether it's Lionel Messi or one of the greats or Michael Jordan. We would always hear that they were able to slow down everything, to not just be in the present, but take away all the distraction. Classic example in a basketball game, you see those free throws about to be taken, and everyone's there waving all of those distractions, and they don't see anything. They're able to slow it down and be present. In a way, that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yes. And one of the, because I always try to go to the research that supports what I'm talking about as much as I can. And one of the things that I found in this lamenting is that I went again to the places where you can get information, and that's the hostels and places where people go to die. And I asked the nurses, what do you notice here about the difference in these people, the way they deal with their ending? And they would say one way or another, the people that led their lives the way they wanted and did something about their lamenting, they don't say that, but in a sense, they have a very peaceful death. The ones who are lamenting, "I should have done this, I should have done that," those are the ones that have that horrid death. So although, for example, you may have a fear of death and you say, "Well, no, I'm doing everything I can," but stop and say, "What am I lamenting in my life if I go back?" And we all lament something. And, okay, now what can I do about that now? Nothing. What can I do to be creative about what I didn't do? Immediately it drops, because the MindBody Code for the fear of death is getting rid of the lamenting, so that then you're ready to go anytime, but you're also ready to live anytime.
Daniel Pink wrote a book called Regrets, how looking backwards moves us forward. And he actually says it's important to have regrets, that people that say, "Oh, I have no regrets," that's not a good thing as well. I think I'm hearing something in the middle, which is regrets are normal, regrets are natural, but do they debilitate you? Do they hold you back? Do they incapacitate you? Or are you able to deal with them and move forward? And I think that's that duality that I think you're talking about, this idea of being able to fuse the past with the future in the present.
Well, yes, this nostalgia and regret, those are very important to look into. Regret is bad for you if you don't do something about it. Oh, I regret. So what are you going to do now? Oh, no, I regret. Put you into helplessness. Not good. The Greeks knew how to hurt you without killing you. If you were a citizen of Athens, they wouldn't kill you. They would just banish you. And because they knew that you would go to what they called the prison of nostalgia. Nostalgia is extremely bad for you because you're living something that already happened and there's nothing you can do about it. And my colleague, Ellen Langer at Harvard, did this work very interestingly. And she had men in their 80s divided into two groups. And one was, they told them, you're going into this place, and they were all in their 80s. You're going to bring pictures of when you were 40 or 50. You're going to act as if you're that age. The environment is going to be just like that. It's going to be it was done in the from 80s and 80 years younger. So they had the I Love Lucy, all the things of the time. You have to live, and you don't talk about your past. You talk about as if you were that age for a week. And then they had measures, physiological measures, psychological measures. And the other group, they told them, okay, we want you to reminisce about the past, the good old days and all these kinds of things. That group got worse. And the one that was doing living as if increased physiological markers of so-called aging within a week. And they did so well that they brought independent raters to look at, they took a picture day 1, day 6, and they inverted, and they said, what is the age difference? And they said anywhere from 5 to 8 years in a week. When they came into the portal of the old man. Where do I put my luggage? No, you got to take your luggage, even if it's one piece at a time. They ended at the end of the week doing touch football. But here's the problem that she found, and that I found too, that they weren't trained to deal with the cultural editors and the cultural co-authors, and they went in as no longer the grandpa, and they would say, I'm going to go get a glass of water. No, I'll get it for you, grandpa. No, I'll get it. Within 6 weeks, they went back into the grandpa old man because the culture wants to put you in portals that has nothing to do with your physiology. So that's an example of these people, the ones who didn't do well. They were nostalgic, and they were going back. And when you're nostalgic, you figure about what you regret and all those kind of things. Not good for you.
I've got something for you. This is my gift for you, Mario, because I also like to play with words. So there is a transition from the good old days to the old good days. That is essentially what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
From the nostalgia to actually being realized in these autumn days of our lives. We have the ability to really enjoy life. And by the way, you wrote a book called The Man from Autumn. See what I just did there? A little bit of
very good.
A transition for you. Now, Mario, you something that's so interesting for me. You call this book a psychological teaching novel. And I was like, wait a second. I know what a novel is. I know what teaching is. I know what psychological is. What is a psychological teaching novel?
This was a fun book for me. This book, which is fiction, was a foundation for my nonfiction work. So what I did is these characters are living by a cognitive theory and practice, by the way they interact with each other, and their life, their rule is joy, and their exception is suffering. Now, that's idealized, because all of them have had tragedies in their lives, but they overcome them, not with Pollyanna, I feel good, but with actually embodying the kinds of things that I talk about in the book. And something happened. I won't spoil the end, but I wrote it in 2004, and the book has some incredible information, oracle kind of information about what happened with the Pope. Because in the book, it's very autobiographical. I I investigate stigmata, the wounds of Christ, and for the Catholic Church and others. And the reason I do is because of the immunology. The people that have these wounds are very, very seldom, 350 since St. Francis in the 13th century. But when they have them, they have other believers have spontaneous remission from illnesses. The wounds don't heal. They don't get infected. And I did one for National Geographic, and we did immunological workup to see what was going on. We were expecting to see high levels of inflammation, stress, antibodies working really to protect the wounds. Nothing. The immune system was completely normal. And I asked one of the doctors who was working with this woman, and she saw a man was healed from prostate cancer and a little boy from leukemia. I followed up 6 months later, and I said, "How does this work?" She said, "I don't know. We don't know anything about this in medical school. This is a miracle." And what it is, I think, is permission from higher or from a doctor or whatever to go into your own abilities to heal yourself in ways that we don't understand.
I want to touch on a few of these ideas in the time we have left over. And I was, as I said, I felt like a kid in a candy store because, for example, attention deficit disorder as an abundance of curiosity. These are all things that are part of our lives now. And what you've done is you are the perfect, I think, fusion between this urgent present and this old good time that we might have ahead. So I'd love to, I'll move through a few of these as quickly as I can. Tell us what you mean by attention deficit disorder as an abundance of curiosity.
It's an abundance of curiosity, but it's not bridled. And I know the neuropsychology of it and the dopamine and the carriers, all of that. It's really an inability to move from one thing to another, number one. It's also an inability to control your curiosity. It's an abundance of curiosity. And it's something that is learned. There's a propensity, there's a genetic propensity, but the world that we live in now with the multi-stimulation is almost like an adaptation to the things that are going on. So it needs to be treated, it can be helped, but I don't see it as a deficit. I see it as an abundance of curiosity that needs to be cultivated and trained into being more focused. And I've done work in that area. I'm not just saying this is how it is. I've done work in that area, and it's a very difficult thing to deal with. And what happens is the dopamine drops with problems with attention deficit, and the medications are given. It's just to bring the dopamine up. But some of them have some very bad side effects. Sometimes you need it, but it's a small percentage that's needed. And dopamine is a curiosity, but they're having curiosity in a very unusual way. Because
so it has to be harnessed and channeled and
yes,
and encouraged and even celebrated as opposed to controlled, contained,
yes,
and even medicated. Here's something else: addictions and obesity as socio-cultural dysfunctional mind-body terrains. Again, I looked at that and I was like, there are too many good words there. But the thing that hit me is, again, we're living in a world trying to understand addiction, period, also obesity. And, I've listened to so many different, the Peter Thiers and, of the world understanding it. So I want to hear, what are your thoughts?
The way I look at it is that the terrain, the actual problem is excessive dysfunctional behavior that's learned. And that could be expressed in alcohol or drugs, or it could be expressed in food. It could be expressed in anything. There are propensities. There are, no question, there are biological propensities. But the studies that have been done, many of them are flawed. And I'll tell you why. The recent research with twins, if you have a family of father and mother alcohol, the probability goes up 5 times of you becoming an alcoholic or a drug addict. But what they did is they had twins that were going to be adopted. Twins are identical DNA. These were identical twins, identical DNA. So one of them goes to a place of high socioeconomic safe environment. The other one goes to a low socioeconomic unsafe environment. Significantly, the ones that developed the addiction were the ones who were in the low unsafe environment. So it's not genetics, it's genetics interacting with the environment. Epigenetics, not just genetics.
All right, here's another one. Does the immune system have morals?
I believe so, because, I mean, it's not like the immune system can figure it out, but what the immune system had to learn was that there was a cultural brain. At first, 100,000 years ago, and consciousness came, our consciousness about 20, 30,000 years ago, but let's say go back, you didn't have a language. Consciousness had not, in fact, what they call the bicameral brain, they would think that your thoughts are commands from God, because you don't have an awareness that these are your thoughts. So then you had grunts. There was a lion coming, you go, all right, the system, the immune, nervous, and endocrine system had to know that you had to have fight or flight psychoterminology, to fight or flight. But then language comes, and nouns come first, and then adjectives, and then verbs. But then lion, the brain, the cultural brain had to teach the rest of the system that lion now is and it has the same psychoterminological value. So language becomes very, very important. Language becomes biosymbolic. Is stress something out there? Stress is an interpretation of something. It's something out of context. You and I are talking now about longevity and all these other things. Then a lion shows up behind you and you go, oh my God, there's a stressor. No, it's just out of context. If we were talking about taming lions, you would say, oh, great, there's a lion. We can work on the lion. It's an interpretation culturally learned. So these things are culturally learned, and some people have the propensity to overeat, and they do it. But what I think is that the dysfunctional, excessive behaviors are conditions that take you away from your excellence, from your value, from your introspection, from all the things that Aristotle talked about. If you don't face those things, then it can become dysfunctional, whether it's pornography or alcohol, and they all have very similar chemistry. The nucleus accumbens and other parts that have to do with the pleasure. In fact, when you have that urge for drugs, you have a lot of dopamine until you get to a drug, and then the dopamine drops because the drug takes over.
So I've got one more to discuss, which is archetypal wounds that can impact our self-esteem and health. Because if people are watching, I think you're going to pick up this cadence, this beautiful, almost a rhythmic fusion of art and science, but also of almost this idea of a physiological common sense in a way. Treat people as treat others as you would want to be treated yourself. And here you talk about archetypal wounds, you talk about abandonment, betrayal, and shame. These are aspects that absolutely can impact your self-esteem and therefore your health and longevity.
Yes, and what I've done with cultures, I looked at cultures because that's really the most important component of they're so insidious and also so helpful, is that most cultures are collectivists. They have to be collectivists. They have to work together. You're a Homo sapien, you're going to be dependent for the first 16, 18 years. So it's very important. But then when you try to individuate and you're no longer working for the collectivism, then these cultures, for your own good and early in life, they start causing these, what I call archetypal wounds, because they're all, in all cultures, they either abandon you emotionally, intellectually, or physically, they shame you, or they betray you. And interestingly, each one of them has a psychoneurological component. The most that's been studied is shame. Shame causes inflammation. So if I say to you, you're so stupid, you're going to have inflammatory molecules, tumor necrosis factor, interleukin-6, C-reactive protein that are inflammatory. You're getting inflammation, but there's no fight. Inflammation is good for you when there's a wound or there's an infection, but when there's a war and there's nobody to fight, then it becomes a chronic inflammation. I have worked with hundreds of cases of fibromyalgia. In fibromyalgia, it's autoimmune. It doesn't necessarily do any kind of damage to the system like the typical autoimmune, but it is an inflammatory illness. And 90% of the women that I've worked with have had some archetypal wound of shame.
Well, I will tell you that there is no shame associated with this man, Dr. Mario Martinez. I started calling you Mario. Now I'm just going to call you Dr. Mario Martinez. First of all, I'm going to make sure that I take a compliment well. So, but first of all, let me give you a compliment. Thank you for enlightening me and everyone watching. Thank you for the work you're doing. It is liberating. I feel free. I feel alive. I feel the burden on my shoulders, that massive burden sometimes I feel is temporarily lifted because of the power of optimism and joy and gratitude and generosity. Today, we discussed how the causes of health are inherited and longevity is culturally learned. I am moving towards the old good days instead of the good old days. The book is called The Mind. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a fusion as well, is it not? It's not healthy body, healthy mind. It's MindBody, the MindBody Code, how to change the beliefs that limit your health, longevity, and success. Please check out Mario's website at biocognitive.com. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. How can you not? In fact, don't even subscribe to mine. Actually, subscribe to mine and Mario's. How about that? Why should it be one or the other? But if you could only subscribe to one, subscribe to his. Following him on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram. And Mario, I'm going to give you the second final word. But what is your final thought that you want to leave us with today?
Well, I want to accept gracefully your gift of what you said. So I'm getting oxytocin right now. And then also, we talked about the immune system being moral. One of the things that we're finding, because each of the archetypal wounds has antidotes, and the antidote that I found for shame is honor. When you're doing honor consciousness, you have anti-inflammatory processes going on. Clinically, I've been able to show that. So but you honor consciously for you, because what they did is they took away something from you. The shame disempowers you and it causes inflammation. The honor empowers you and causes anti-inflammation.
I honor you today, and I told you, unfortunately, the last word always goes to someone who probably will live to be 200. Of course, I'm talking about Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
I think he will.
I think he will. He'll chase down anyone trying to take him out. And we will be back soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.